Well, hi, welcome to Deep Background, a program where we introduce you to the people you see or will see here on Lighthouse TV. Over the past couple of years, this station has maintained its mission of delivering the rich spiritual and uplifting content you've come to expect and love. Programming you just won't get anywhere else. You'll hear pastors and political leaders speaking at a slightly different pace, not so fast, maybe not so angry, so you can hear their points. You'll find programming that doesn't sensationalize, doesn't deliver the good news with a price tag or promise you a bigger bank account and freedom from struggle if you send in a check. No, Lighthouse TV is different. We say positively different. Our message is good news. It's unconditional, hope for everyone, regardless of who you are or where you've been. And that's why when you see some of our new programming focused on national issues or science or local interest stories, you won't find content that aims to provoke or create controversy. Our programming goal is to respect you, the viewer, let you sort out the facts and make an informed decision on where you stand. That's why today I want to introduce, or maybe reintroduce you to a man who's been on national TV hundreds, probably thousands of times over the past few decades since he first took his post in the White House. He's coming to this station this summer. Take a look.
His name is Joe Watkins. Born in New York's Woodside Projects, graduated from Penn on scholarship, became a presidential aide, and used his voice as pastor and citizen to promote opportunity, civility, and decency in the public square.
Even love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, pray for those who despitefully use you.
From the state of independence, this is Joe Watkins.
Well, Joe, first, welcome to Lighthouse TV. What an honor to meet you. You've got one of those faces, I think a lot of people, if they ran into you at the airport or 30th Street Station, they'd say, I think I know who you are, but maybe can't put the name with the face.
Denzel Washington.
Does that happen a lot?
Oh, yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah, we don't just
used
like
to
him.
happen.
So, what have you been doing that has earned you the kind of right to have a relationship with people that you've never met in odd places like bus stops and airports?
Well, just a great opportunity with this station to do something good, to reach out to people and to share my life's journey and to also share their journey with everybody watching. And God has been so good to me. I've been really blessed, just phenomenally blessed, and having a chance to share how good He's been to me. And that's not to say that my life's always been easy or that it's just been one straight line of success. I've had failure mixed in with the success, challenges of all kinds, but God is so good, and He's been so kind to me, and I have an obligation to share His love and kindness with other people. So this is a chance to share that, I think, through this show.
Well, I saw some of the pictures we just showed our audience. I want to show you a couple of them, and the first one that caught my eye was this team here. Now, where are you in the picture?
So I'm in the second row, in the middle row, sitting there. And if I look kind of beaten down, it's because my father is that tall guy in the back, is the coach. He played for CCNY, which was the #1 college basketball team in America in 1950. They were one of the few teams to ever win the NIT and the NCAA when you could play in both tournaments. And so he played in that great team and was well known in New York and around the country in his era. And was a school teacher and then a principal of a school.
So where was this picture taken?
In Bayside, Queens. And I played left bench for the most part. I got in. My dad was pretty tough, and he would tell me to pay attention. That's where I learned about paying attention and being alert. He told me before one of the games, he said, now, when I put you in, make sure that you're paying attention and not goofing off. And he put me in the outfield, and I remember I was doing my usual thing, like look at the daisies and looking around at stuff. And I heard him shouting out to me from the dugout, and I looked over, and I couldn't tell what he was saying, but his arms were waving wildly.
You can hear this voice
I
now,
hear,
right?
Yeah, he just, I said, what's he all, I'm looking at my dad, what's he all upset about? And just as he was yelling at me, and I put my hand to say I couldn't hear, the ball hit me right in my neck. Somebody hit a fly ball to me, and my father wanted me to catch it, of course. I wasn't paying attention.
Stay alert.
Instead of, I wasn't alert, and the ball hit me right in the side of my neck, and I fell down, and everybody was laughing. And
So what was it like when we hear Queens, it conjures up, movies, scenes, and I don't know if I know what to think of when you say, look, you grew up in the projects in Queens. What was that like for you?
Yeah, well, I guess I'm more blessed than it may sound. The projects can be really a tough place. My mother reminds me that it wasn't so bad when we lived there. I don't think it was. You know, human beings tend to adjust to wherever they are. So if you grow up somewhere and that's all you know, then it's fine by you. So everywhere that I lived as a kid was fine by me. I didn't know any better. The people who lived around us lived the way we did. So I was perfectly satisfied. I wasn't afraid. I lived in Bayside, Queens, which I thought was a nice town, integrated town. We lived in kind of a black enclave in that town. And I didn't really think anything about it until...
So what were the ethnic kind of blocks that made up your town?
So you had a black community. There was a small enclave in Bayside. Then you had Polish, Irish, Italian people, people from other places, some Hispanics, not a few people from there was a girl in my class from Japan, Masako Kawase, and she was from Japan. But other than that, most of the kids were from European countries. Many of them had parents who had escaped whatever country during the Second World War and had moved to the U.S. and were living in New York. And so I had a lot of classmates whose parents were immigrants. One of the boys, Peter Katalidis, his parents were immigrants from Greece, and he was a great kid.
Let's look at another picture.
So that's boarding school now. This is Middlesex School. I got a scholarship to Middlesex.
So how did that happen?
Well, it happened because my dad was kind. His kindness to some boys in his class at Harlem, and from his public school in Harlem where he was a teacher. They said, Mr. Watkins, can you give us a ride to interview at these boarding schools because we're being asked to apply. And my father knew nothing about the boarding schools, took the boys on the trip, brought me and my older brother with him. We sat in the back of our station wagon, and we got there. My father said, this is a new world. He had never seen...
Well, this looks like a New World picture because I'm counting, I think, 2 African Americans in a sea of...
Three of us.
3, but still a sea.
In a sea, yes.
Yeah.
And not just, I mean, it's one thing to consider the ethnicity of folks, but it's also another thing to consider the social class of people. So I got a scholarship to go to this school. I'd been blessed to do well in school. I was always at the top of my class. And I got a scholarship to go to this boarding school because my dad was smart enough to ask the folks if they would take an interest in us and his kids. And I went away to this school, and I was suddenly surrounded by kids who were very, very wealthy. Robert Kennedy's son was a year behind me, David Kennedy. His cousin Christopher Lawford was yet another year behind him, so 2 years behind me. One of those guys in this picture's grandfather or great-grandfather was the founder of Middlesex School, founded in 1901 by Frederick Windsor.
Were you welcomed in?
I was welcomed in. I mean, it was an experiment for the folks at the time. They hadn't really had students of color. It was all boys back then, and they hadn't had any students of color. So I was in the second group of 3 black boys to come to the school, and the rest of the school was white. And with the exception of, there were some other kids there mixed in. There were scholarship kids, but almost everybody was wealthy, and many of my classmates were second, third generation Middlesex students. They could point to fathers and grandfathers and uncles who had gone to the school as well.
So this was groundbreaking.
It was groundbreaking. Governor Bill Weld went to Middlesex School. Governor Richardson, who ran for president, was secretary in Bill Clinton's cabinet, went to Middlesex.
So it's the definition of WASP.
Oh, absolutely. The guy that founded Instagram went to Middlesex. I mean, you know, we had Sandy Pay, whose father, I.M. Pay, of course, is one of the greatest architects the world has ever known, was just a couple of years ahead of me. Bill Hurt, who has had a great career in the motion pictures, won an Academy Award, was 2 years ahead of me. Steve Carell, a few years behind me, who made his movie fortune in crazy movies like 40-Year-Old Virgin. Yeah. A few years behind me at Middlesex.
But how did your grounding keep you, Joe Watkins, I mean, when people meet you, all the crew that's met you today, arrogance, pride would not be something they would associate with you. No. How did you stay grounded?
Well, I wasn't so grounded at Middlesex. I was like kids. I was like most kids were. I went to church. I wasn't a believer as such. I hadn't given my life to Jesus, and I hadn't been changed yet. But I was humble because I realized when I got there that the people who went to school with me, one of my roommates, the guy standing behind me to the left, Mike Sweeney, who's still one of my closest friends, was talking to me one night and said, describe for me where you live. So I described my home in Bayside, Queens. There's a picture of me in the intro that you have showing me on the brick wall sitting outside the home, a two-family house in Queens. That's where we lived, and I thought that was plenty nice. So he said, "Tell me about your house, where you live." I said, "Well, we grew up in a nice house. You know, there's a little brick wall, there's a driveway. We're on a busy street. There's an expressway, right there in front of the house, and an exit ramp from the expressway not too far away." And I said,
This is not the world of your friends.
"Oh, well, he was just amazed."
Yeah.
Because initially when he said, "What's the name of the town we live?" I said, "Bayside." He says, "Oh, it sounds lovely. You must have lovely bay breezes."
Yeah.
I said, "Well, I don't think so." And he said, "Well, where do you summer?" I said, "I summer in Bayside." He says, "Oh, that's lovely. Where do you winter?" I said, "Well, I winter in Bayside, and I fall and spring there too. I mean, it's the only house we have."
Yeah.
He said, well, we winter in the Bahamas. We summer on the Cape, and our primary home is in Concord." And I said, well, tell me about your house." He says, "Well, you come to some gates, and then you go down this road for about a mile. You'll see some houses on the left and a house on the right. There's a large house on a hill. That's where we used to live, but my parents got tired of that house, and now our cousins live there. And you go around a bend, and you cross over a little tiny bridge, and you'll see a home, a newly built home, sitting right behind a pond, and that's our home." And I said, "Really?" I said, your house is a mile from the street?" He said, "How many acres do you have?" He said, "Well, I don't know, several hundred. I don't know exactly, but several hundred acres." I said, "You have a pond?" He said, "Well, we have several ponds on the grounds, but there's one right by our house." And
Did it feel like you'd gotten the golden ticket?
Well, I wanted to see this place.
Yeah.
And when I saw it, I said, "Wow." But what it did was it opened up a world to me, a world that I didn't know previously. I didn't know that people lived like that. I didn't know that people had summer homes.
Right.
I didn't know that people had winter homes. I just thought that if you were fortunate enough, because compared to Harlem, where my father taught, where most people lived in a tenement, where I was living was pretty good. And so, you had a house, in our case, a 3-bedroom, 2-family house, and I thought that was pretty good. 6 kids in my family, 3 boys, 3 girls, 2 parents. And, the 3 boys were in 1 bedroom and the 3 girls were in another bedroom. I thought that was good living, because my father took us to see people who lived in Harlem. 6 people, 6 kids, and 2 parents, if they had 2 parents, were all in 1 room. And there might be a single mattress for everybody to sleep on. So when I would come away from those kinds of visits with my father, I thought to myself, boy, we are so privileged. We are so blessed.
Yeah.
And then I went to Middlesex, and my friends, I remember the admissions director talked to my colleagues, my classmates, about where I lived, and he said, "Oh, boys, you wouldn't want to live there. Where he lives is quite something."
So I'm gonna skip over decades,
Yeah.
and we're gonna fly forward to you working in the West Wing of the White House.
Yeah.
And that's where people who watch TV and watch political TV know you from.
Yeah.
Tell me about how this extraordinary path happened, but then what was it like? I think everybody wants to know what's it like working in the White House?
Few things are as they seem, and so it is even working in the White House for the President of the United States. It's much smaller when you get there, and you're working directly with people who are famous and powerful, and still they're like you and me. They're people. They're regular people. And so I work closely with Andy Card, who was the Deputy Chief of Staff, and Dave Demarest, and
You became President George W. Bush's Chief of Staff.
Chief of Staff. Yeah. And I worked side by side with a lot of these people. I was selected by Lee Atwater, who had been the president's campaign manager, to work in the White House.
The legendary.
The legendary.
Yeah.
And my boss for years, I'd worked in the U.S. Senate for Dan Quayle when he was a U.S. Senator. He became the vice president. And so here it is, the vice president, who I call Dan, is now the second most powerful person on the planet.
Did that change after he was elected?
Well, I call him Mr. Vice President. I still call him Mr. Vice President.
Yeah.
He has a nickname for me too, though.
Do you want to share it?
Well, he calls me Gorgeous Joe. Yeah. So apparently when I was on the Senate staff, somebody said that I was gorgeous. Probably somebody couldn't see very well, but so he picked it up, of course, and so I came in one day and he says, "Hey, Gorgeous Joe." I said,
It'd be a good
"Where'd you get
title
that
for a
from?"
book one day, Joe.
I think.
Yeah.
I think not.
So, your experiences there then led you to running for political office, trying all kinds of different things, but then maybe improbably for someone who has now a pedigree, lifted out of Queens, placed on a national stage and a platform.
I got into politics through ministry. I was a campus minister, college chaplain after I finished seminary. I had no great plans for myself to do anything other than minister.
So this wasn't, you leave Middlesex, you get a scholarship to Penn, and then you put, goal number one is to be president one day.
No, my father was disappointed because he wanted me to go to law school. He thought that his children should either go to law school or medical school, and I chose to do neither. And instead, I had become a Christian. I had accepted Christ as my Savior my sophomore year in college. I said, my life is going to be centered on who God wants me to be. And as I prayed about it, God opened to me that he wanted me to go into the ministry to serve people and to share the good news with others about him. And so I went to seminary after college, and I met the girl of my dreams in college, and luckily she thought the same of me, and we were married shortly after we graduated, and we went off to seminary together. And no great plans for politics, didn't really care about politics. But I was a campus minister in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and Dan Quayle, who became a member of Congress and a member of the Senate, and then the director of national intelligence for President Trump, saw me and said, on the campus, and said, can I have a cup of coffee with you, just talk to you about my campaign? And I said, Dan, I can't help you. I said, I'm not from here, I'm from the East Coast. I'm an African American in a town where there are few African Americans. I don't have a very strong constituency. I'm here at the campus. He said, I want to talk to you anyway. And he was such a wonderful, beautiful, grounded Christian man. And he shared with me what he was doing while he was running. And he told me that his boss, Dan Quayle, was running for the Senate. And he said, could you help us? And I ended up helping them in their campaigns. And that's what led me. And then along the way, I ended up being invited to work for Senator Quayle after they both won in the fall of 1980, in November 1980. And while I was working for Dan Quayle, I was invited to give the invocation at a big state dinner. And who was the speaker? Vice President George Bush. And so I got to meet Vice President Bush and his wife, and sit in the dais with them.
So here's the question.
Yeah.
I guess some people say, well, sounds like Joe was in the right place at the right time. He had good connections, he'd gone to these great schools and all that. You seem to say that the path of following Christ,
God's opened every door.
He's the one.
He's opened every door. I firmly believe that he has put me where he wants me to be. I haven't always wanted to be where he wants me to be. You can trust that, but God has put me precisely where I needed to be, where he wants me to be.
So to somebody out there just finished college, and they are asking the question, okay, where I've got a deadline to move out of the house, and the money's going to run out, and I need to find a job, and I can't pick where do I start?
Talk to your Heavenly Father. He loves you. He made you for a reason. There's a purpose for your life. You have gifts, talents that nobody else has for a reason. You ought to share them. You ought to put them to use. And that's what I did. I mean, talk to your Heavenly Father. He loves you. And I prayed to God to use me. Take whatever gifts I have. Take my silliness, whatever talents I have, and use them for your glory and your purpose. And he'll do that. And that's what he did for me.
There's one piece of your biography that you're going to read along. Interesting. It almost keeps getting better and better and better. And then there is this recent assignment. So you're on TV a lot, but on the Sundays between the times you're on TV, you're pastoring a church in North Philadelphia. And it is not a big, shining mega church with 5 campuses. It's in one of the communities of the most need in Philly. How did that happen? And why are you there?
I prayed about it. I felt that I wasn't being used of God fully, and I prayed. I was an associate minister at a church, but a little more than, I just sat there at Sundays in the pulpit and stood when they asked the associates to stand, and I didn't have any real role. I said, Lord, I know that you didn't bring me this far to not use me. This is 22 years ago. And I was working in the investment industry, and I hadn't really even started doing TV yet. And I said, Lord, use me. And so I got a phone call from one of my classmates from college who said, our pastor just left, and could you help us a couple of Sundays a month? And I said, well, yeah. I mean, they're not using me here at all. I could do 4 Sundays a month. And so I went over to the church, and it's in a tough neighborhood, one of the poorest neighborhoods in North Philadelphia.
And what does that mean to people who are watching that don't know what a tough neighborhood looks like?
Well, it means that there's an open, there's a drug market not far away from the church, that people get shot in and around the community all the time. On New Year's Eve every night when we have prayer service, every New Year to welcome in the New Year, we know that the New Year has begun when we hear the gunshots, because the automatic gunfire right outside the church. This is habitual in that area.
So Joe, I can hear people now watching saying, Joe, get out of there. You're putting your family at risk, you're putting yourself at risk, and you could preach other places that could use you just as much in the suburbs.
Well, that's where God put me. And I'll be perfectly honest with you. That's not where I wanted to be. Like when I got that assignment, when I went to the church, I said, "Well, Lord, not this. I mean, I want to be used by you, but I'd like, give me a nice big church somewhere with a budget and with a choir and people and people who hundreds of people maybe." And instead, God sent me someplace where there was less than 50. There were less than 50 members in a poor neighborhood. A lot of single mothers with their children, older people who aren't able to get out of the neighborhood, very, very poor people who aren't educated, in some cases people who've been just out of prison, and folks who are kind of down in their luck. And then some folks who have been in the neighborhood for a long time and who are working for a living, who are good working class people. They don't make a lot of money, but they love God and they live in the neighborhood. And that's where God put me. And God said, you know what? You're supposed to love the people that I've sent you to share with and to minister to. And
so is that a lesson for every Christian then who is thinking of leaving the post and finding an assignment that's more attractive?
I think so. I think that you want to be where God puts you, and remember that success in a church is not measured in earthly terms. What God considers to be a successful church is a church where people are coming to Christ and their lives are changed because they're indwelt by God's Spirit, and they're loving their neighbor like themselves because now they love God with all their heart, mind, soul, and strength. And whether it's 3 people or 8 people or 50 people or 100 people, whether the folks have money or they're unemployed, whether they're just out of prison or they're a single mother, no matter who they are, you're there to preach the gospel, to love them like you love yourself, to heal the hearts of the brokenhearted, and to bind the wounds of the captives, to welcome everybody that walks in there, no matter what their condition, and to let them know that God loves them. You may be the only piece of God they see. The God in you, the God's Spirit in you may be the only bit of God they see. And so let God's Spirit shine from you wherever He puts you, and don't complain. Don't complain either. Don't wherever you are, don't complain. Be thankful that God has put you there, and then do what He's put you there to do.
You talked about your partner in life. I want to show your family here. Can you introduce us to your family and tell us a little bit? You look very young. Everyone watching this,
I'm much younger.
But apparently,
I'm much younger. My birth certificate's wrong.
But apparently, you have grandchildren and multiple grandchildren.
So I've been married for 45 years. I met the woman of my dreams, Stephanie Ann Taylor Watkins, back in college, and I saw her first. She didn't see me. She didn't notice me. But I saw her walking down the main walk-in campus, most beautiful woman I've ever seen in my life. And I remember I was with one of my buddies, and I said, I have got to know her. I've got to meet her. And I finally had a mutual friend, introduce us, and she just changed my life. I said, Lord, this is, because I've been praying, Lord, I'd had girlfriends on campus and girlfriends in high school, but they were always kind of dead ends.
And you've forgotten all their names.
I have. But I've long forgotten all their names. I better have. And I met this woman, and she really, in the best sense of the word, completed me. And I said, boy, I said, Lord, thank you so much. If I can just be with this woman for the rest of my life, and even in the life that comes after this one, I would be grateful. And I was so glad that she felt about me the way I felt about her, and we got engaged and then married after college. And so we were blessed to have 3 wonderful children. In the middle is Tiffany, our oldest daughter, and her husband Mick. Mick is from Ireland. He's from County Cork. He's from a town called Clonakilty in County Cork in Ireland. And they have 2 beautiful children, Fiona and Maeve. So they have beautiful Irish names.
Yes.
They are real Black Irish. You've heard about the Black Irish?
No.
Well, they called. There's some Irish people who have dark features who are called the Black Irish. my grandkids are the real black Irish.
Yes,
you know,
indeed.
they're black and they're Irish, and they're wonderful. So Fiona is 3 going at 4, and Maeve is going to be 2 in October. My second child, our second child, is Courtney, standing right next to me, and her husband Mark, my son-in-law Mark, and Mark is from Pennsylvania, from Easton, Pennsylvania, and his father was a dean at Lafayette College. Courtney and Mark have 2 beautiful children, our oldest grandkids, little Mark, who is 18 and headed off to Lafayette College, and Taylor, who is heading to her junior year at Middlesex. They both went to Middlesex School where I went, so it's great to be a grandparent at Middlesex with grandkids at Middlesex, which is wonderful. Tiffany, I should tell you, worked for the Republican National Committee and then in the White House for George W. Bush. She
in
had
her
the same
father's footsteps.
Yes, she had the same
Amazing.
job I had, and then worked for the Republican National Committee, and then for one of the governors, the governor of Massachusetts, and then now is consulting over in Ireland and working for a gaming company. Courtney finished college and then decided she was going to go to graduate school and get her doctorate. So she's finishing up her doctorate at the University of Pennsylvania in education. She has been the head of upper school at Stewart Country Day School in Princeton, New Jersey, but she just got called to be the associate head of school at Oxbridge Academy in West Palm Beach, Florida. So it's a great school.
So for me,
Yes.
I have a lot of parenting questions, and in the next episode, I think I'm going to have you answer all of them.
Yes.
But Joe, we've run out of time.
Yeah.
When we sit down next time,
Joe Jr. and his wife, Paul.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
one more. Let's go back.
Joe Jr. They met in college. They met at Penn, where we went to school, where Stephanie and I met as well. And she's a nurse, and Joe is in the investment industry. He is a bond trader for MetLife and does a great job. They've got 2 twin boys who'll be 3 years old at the end of June. So we're grateful to God for them.
Well, you should be.
Yeah.
Congratulations to both of you.
Thank you.
The next time that we get together, we're going to talk about the goals of this program, Joe Watkins State of Independence, and there's some pretty lofty ones.
Yeah.
Speaking to this time and this moment in our culture. Thank you for joining us.
Can't wait.
Well, that's all for this edition of Deep Background on Lighthouse TV. We'd love to hear from you and learn how our programming is encouraging you and giving you hope. You can find and connect with Joe Watkins, host of State of Independence, at joewatkins.net or on our website, lighthousetv.org. We'll see you next time. Lighthouse TV, positively different, viewer-supported and sustained programming.